Welcome to It's Your Business. I'm your host, Dianne Shaver, here to tell you how to protect your identity online, in your bank account, your social security information, and in 34 billion records where identity thieves like to go. So just go to DIANNESHAVER.LegalShield.com and click on Identity Theft Protection to find out how. Remember, Legal Shield is the only service that actually restores your identity once it's been breached, so you don't have to do a thing. Again, go to DIANNESHAVER.LegalShield.com for more information. So tonight I have as my guest a friend, a close friend. We've been friends for quite a while, actually, who's also a skilled intuitive. And James Himm Mitchell uses intuition to give information to clients, and they can begin to heal heartache, heal businesses, heal whatever ails them. And his business is LifePlan Intuitive Coaching. Welcome, James.
Thanks, Diane, for having me.
So what is intuitive coaching? How does that work?
Well, coaching is a process where we take a client from where they're at in the present to where they want to be in the future in terms of either a personal or professional goal. Now, an intuitive coaching process is similar to just a regular or standard coaching process, but it's just the use of intuition that's added to that. In my particular case, I use things like dream analysis and intuitive consultations using tarot. So that factors into what it is that I do.
So is intuition real? A lot of people don't believe in it.
Right. I think it's just a matter of how we word it. I think for some people it is intuition. I think for some people it's like gut instinct. You know, that when people say something happened and they say, well, something just told me, you know, inner voice, that still small voice. A hunch. Most people just say, yeah, I just had a hunch. So I think those are all intuition to me. It's just language differently, you know, and that's just based on the person's perception of what, you know, being intuitive and what intuition really is. Right.
So when you're doing your coaching, you just draw upon all the resources that you have. I mean, you have a lot of background. Tell us a little bit about your background and how that led you to do the intuitive coaching.
I love the story. What happened was I started having precognitive dreams. And for those who might not be aware, a precognitive dream is just a dream that foretells a future event. And so after having a number of those, I just really got interested in like, well, why is this happening? Because I knew it was happening to me for a reason. Yeah. So I wanted to know more about that. But it also led me into looking at dreams overall. So I started working with dreams, and then people found out that I could work with dreams. And so I started moving into that. And then my work with tarot came as a result of having a dream.
Okay, tell me about that.
So
That's fun.
In the dream, this was in 1998. I had this dream where I was reading playing cards because here's the thing, Diane, I had never seen or heard of a tarot card, so I didn't know what they were.
Wow.
So in my dream, I was reading playing cards. I knew sure enough what those were. Yeah. And in the dream, I was reading them as if I was looking at my future. And I remember taking notes, and I was writing things down in a journal. And somewhere in the dream, I had the thought or the awareness that I was having a challenge with this process. It was difficult. But I also had the awareness that I needed to stick with it. Yeah. So I woke up from the dream wondering what that was all about because I had never done anything like that in waking life. So I had a dream dictionary on my bedside table at the time, so I looked into that, and it said that playing cards were directly related to tarot cards. And so that's how I first heard about tarot cards, was from this dream dictionary. So I said, well, I'm the type of person where if I want to know something, I research it. Yeah. So I lived close to the community library at the time, so I went right down the street to the library and checked out the only book they had on tarot on the shelf. Wow. And so that kind of just brought me to tarot. 6 months later after I had the dream, because I didn't apply it right away, 6 months after I had the dream, I went and purchased my first tarot deck, and that was in 1999. I've been reading tarot ever since. Wow.
Were you skeptical when you got the dream and it said, you know, do the tarot thing? When you did the research, it was like, what do you mean? Was that kind of
I didn't really have that thought. I just wanted to know, like, well, what am I supposed to do with that? Yeah. Just like when I was having the precognitive dreams, I'm like, okay, I'm aware of the experience. but what do I do with it?
Yeah.
Because I'm the type of person where I have to practically do something with something.
Sure.
So I wanted to know, well, what am I supposed to do with it? And so same thing with tarot. When I got into tarot, I never questioned the dream in any way, like that was rubbish or anything like that.
That was great.
I just kind of just went with it. And so I was reading for myself for a couple of years, and then I just kind of just started paying attention when people found out what I could do and they were interested in that, because I just thought it was going to be something for me. And so I said, well, I need experience of what it's like to work with other people. So I was doing that for free. People came to me and they wanted to, I would draw 3 cards, I started out with 3.
Sure.
And so I was doing that. And then what happened was somebody came to me and said, how much do you charge for a reading? And that's how that business was born.
New thought.
That's how it was born.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'm paying attention. So life was presenting something to me. And I said, I had the thought that's people actually get paid for this. Because I didn't realize people got paid for that. So I said, people get paid for this. And so that's how my business got started.
Yeah. Before
it morphed into coaching, because I did that for a number of years before the coaching came along.
But that's how you and I met. We both did readings
that's
at
right.
Jumping Waters, remember?
That's right. Absolutely. Yes, I do remember.
Wow, that was a while ago.
That was fun. Yeah, I missed that place.
That was wonderful. When was that? Like 2000 something?
Yeah, I think that was in 2000. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So how are these things different? Like, how is a reading different from coaching? How is a dream thing different from how are all these components?
That's a great question. When I work with people and we're not doing anything involving coaching, so let's say I'm working with a person about their dream, I help them understand what the dream means for them. So, and that process is we kind of look at the dream. I hear what the dream is. I have them tell me what the dream is. And then we take it apart by symbols. Okay. And I ask the person, in their frame of reference, what does this particular symbol mean to them? Because I can approach that work one or two ways. I could actually hear the dream and tell them what the dream means.
Right.
But I find it much more powerful if I make them part of the process.
Yeah.
And I also have learned over time that the person who had the dream, I call them the author of the dream. So they're on some level, they really know what the dream means. It's a matter of getting down to excavating what those symbols mean for that person. Because I could have a frame of reference for a symbol that would totally negate what it is that they think the symbol means. And so it's much more powerful if they're part of the process.
Yeah.
So we work with that. And so basically that's it. So they walk away with an understanding of what the dream means for them. That's usually basically what dream work is all about.
Right.
With the tarot consultation, a person will come to me and we'll look at what it is that they most want to know about. And I encourage people to come with a question, concern, situation that they want some guidance on. And I find that if they ask a specific question, the information that they get will be much more beneficial to them, as opposed if they just come and just say something like, well, I just want to know what's going on, or I just want a general reading. Because that could just apply to anyone at any given time about anything.
Right.
But I like being much more specific because the results are much better.
Absolutely.
Even with that, I may give them some information based on what it is that we're looking at, the cards that are on the table in front of me. I sometimes get other information that floats in, and so I give them that because my role in that is I'm the messenger. Language is I'm the mouthpiece, so I just give them all the information as it comes because it's not for me to hold on to.
Right.
That process is different from the coaching element. If I'm working with a person and we're doing dream coaching, let's say, what it is that there's a twofold process. The first part is we work on what the dream means. The second part, which is much more powerful, is how do we practically apply the dream to your life? Because dreams are here to help us improve whatever area of the life that your dream is trying to talk about.
Absolutely.
So the dream is not just here to say, hey, this is what I'm all about, and then you don't do anything with it. The dream wants you to do something with it. So then the coaching part becomes, okay, we understand what the dream means. What are you willing to do with the information that you've gotten? And we work on creating a plan of action to move that person forward with whatever the information is from the dream. If it's a tarot consultation, same thing. I look to see what kind of information the tarot is giving the client in terms of guidance or advice.
Right.
And then say, okay, how can we create a plan of action with that? Because the role of coaching is designed, it's a threefold process. Basically, it's this. What's the vision that the person has? then I ask them this question, which is very pivotal. What do you think could come up that would be a block or obstacle or a challenge to keep you from reaching that vision that you have now just stated?
Right.
And then we work after they tell me what they think are going to be the blocks or challenges or obstacles. Then we create an action plan around that, because this is what's going to happen. The obstacles that they've acknowledged are going to come up.
Sure.
And so the idea is, how can we counteract those challenges when they show up? Because the idea is, if they're going to hit a wall, they may stop. The idea is we want to help them climb over the wall or go around the wall and keep going.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's where the coaching part comes in.
I love that. One of the things I'm noticing, and from what you're saying, it sounds like it's true for you as well, and that is people are less skeptical of all of this, of intuition, of tarot, of dreams and so forth. I mean, I think it's become more part of the main culture, pretty much.
I will agree with that. And I think as time goes on, I think people are becoming more conscious, more aware, and wanting to be more self-aware. And I think that helps. I think we're moving into more of a spiritual age where people are now becoming more spiritual seekers, and they're seeking alternative ways of becoming aware. And that's not to discount the ways that we have been doing it previously, because there's some validity to those. But I also think that, and of course I come from the place where everything originates in spirit, so, I always go to that place first.
Sure.
But I will agree with you on that. And I also think, too, that for me, it's been an interesting process, because when I started this, I didn't get the usual kind of like, oh, that's woo-woo kind of thing.
Yeah.
I kind of approached it to the point where I kind of demystified it and made it more practical based on my approach to it. And I also think that appearance goes a long, long way. People would look at me and see, well, I'm not wearing a turban, I'm not, looking at a crystal ball. I'm kind of just an average guy where, t-shirt and jeans, or I wear a polo shirt and, slacks, or I wear a shirt and a tie when I'm doing this work. And so people kind of take that into account too. It's like, oh, okay, this is something that could be really serious, and plus I think it holds some merit. I mean, it works for me. I mean, I've used it in my own personal life, so I know if it works for me, it's bound to work for somebody else.
Right. And you can give them stories of your experience, and they can, when you tell something to someone and it's the truth, they feel it.
Absolutely.
That it's not hype, that it's real. And then they begin seeing it in their own life.
And people like stories. People like hearing about other people's experiences, because, 9 times out of 10, if I've had an experience, usually I attract people who are either going through a similar experience or will go through an experience. And so my experience will help them as they go through theirs.
And since we're all connected anyway, what happens to one person certainly is usable information for many other people.
Absolutely.
So this is like a very interesting time, I think. And the piece, I think, that is coming to the fore now, there was a time when people looked at this as woo-woo. Let's go back to that. And it was, if you perceived it, then that was all you had to do. But now the action piece is there. And I think that's what's making all the difference, that you can get information, but until you learn how to put it into an action that's going to create what you want, you don't have much.
Absolutely. And like I said, I think that was my role and the element I bring to it, because that's what I wanted for myself.
Yeah.
I'm like, this information is nice, but I wanted something concrete. I wanted a plan of action. I wanted to be able to do something with the information that was coming through. And so that's what I provide for my clients.
Yeah. I mean, that's important, because when a client leaves you, they have to have kind of a plan, or else, I mean, it's just been a very entertaining hour and that's it.
Right. I have one client. She's a wonderful person who refers people out to me a lot.
Yeah.
And so she'll tell people, like, when she's talking about what I do, she'll say, oh, but you have to be prepared because he'll make you do some work. So cause she knows. And here's the funny thing about that too, Dianne. I didn't realize I was coaching in my earlier years before coaching was introduced to me. And so when I went for my training and certification, I realized I was coaching all along and didn't know what coaching was, but I was actually doing it in my consultations with people. So I just love how things you're doing it without realizing that you're doing it.
So now you have a formal name for it.
I do, yes.
But doing a reading is coaching. I mean, they will not give you information just to kind of put it out there to show how brilliant you are. It has to be usable, and therefore it has to be something that improves someone's life.
Right, and exactly, in my process, it's not about me at all. It's about what my role is. I'm just the vessel for the information for the client. and that's all I am. In order for me to be clear and continually be clear, that my ego can't get wrapped up in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and that is key, because there are some people who do get wrapped up into it and think they're absolutely wonderful. But as you said, this comes from spirit or God or whatever words you want to use to describe it. But it certainly is not personal in that sense.
Right. Absolutely not.
So when did you decide this was going to be a business? To go from doing the readings for nothing, then learning, oh, yeah, people can actually get paid for this, and then making this a real business. Right. So talk about that process, if you don't mind.
No, sure, that's fine. I decided it was going to be a business about 2 years ago was when I actually made the decision. And I was in a place where I was working in corporate America. I was working in a management position. And I just got to the point where I just wanted to do something different. I had been involved in that industry for a number of years. And I just, I got to the point where this can't be all there is to my working life. Yeah. I set the intention when I started that work that I just wanted something that paid the bills, and I got that. Yep. But as time went on and I grew and evolved, I realized I wanted more out of work, and I wasn't getting that. And so I would come home feeling a sense of not feeling fulfilled, feeling like there's something more, something greater that I'm supposed to be doing in service to the world, and I wasn't doing that. And I wasn't to dismiss the work that I was doing, because it was a great job, it was a great career, but it was no longer what I wanted to do or what I felt I was here to do. So I really went on a search for that. And so I started taking psychology classes. I went for my bachelor's in psychology, and then it wasn't until I started my graduate work in psychology, and I was taking a Counsel All Things. Okay. And I asked the question because I wasn't licensed to give advice or therapy, but I wanted to have an experience of what it was like to work with people in this similar fashion without having to worry about that component. Right. And so, I started the conversation by talking about having dreams. So I had this dream, and I kind of just forgot about it. Yeah. And I had a mentor of mine look at it, because even though I work with other people's dreams, I'm not always clear on my own. So I have learned that when I'm not clear, it's nice to get somebody else's opinion. Sure. So this person whose work I valued, I shot him this dream through email and had him take a look at it. And he sent me a nice MP3 reply and, breaking down the dream. And I listened to it, and it kind of put it away. So one day, as I'm asking this question about how can I gain experience working with people without having to do advice or therapy, I was folding laundry. And this is how intuition works for me, because I'm doing mindless activities. Yeah. So I'm folding laundry, and an intuitive thought said, find that MP3 and listen to it again. So I went looking for it. I stopped right in there, and I went looking for it. And so I found it, and I listened to it. And somewhere in the interpretation, which I didn't hear the first time, my mentor mentioned that I had a spiritual gift or ability for counseling. But, there's a difference between the spiritual counseling and counseling the way we do it in the Western world, where you have to be licensed and all of that. Right. He was saying that from a spiritual sense, that you're trained, life trains you to be a counselor. So you come in already knowing how to do that. Right. And he said, so to get around that, he said, you might want to consider being a life coach. And I heard that this time, where I didn't hear it before. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know what a life coach is. I don't know anything about that. So I did what I did before with the tarot. I went researching it. Yeah. And so I found a wonderful program that I could afford. And I went for a 3-day intensive in North Carolina. And this was an institute that they travel all around the United States in different venues. And so they train you for over a course of 3 days. So you start on a Friday and you leave on a Sunday. And when you leave on the Sunday, you are certified. You're a certified life coach. Oh. So I did that. And so that's how I got into life coaching. But it was a result of having a dream again. Yeah. And following the prompting of the dream. That's your access, is dreams. Yes. It's so interesting. Yeah. Everything that I have done in terms of work has been as a result of having a dream first. Yeah. So it was funny when I went for my training and certification, we all had to stand up one by one and explain how we got to be where we were. Yeah. So when it got to be me, I said, I'm here because I'm following a dream. I'm chasing a dream. And so I had to explain that, because, there are the sleeping dreams, and then there are the waking dreams we all have. And so I had to explain, it was a sleep dream that brought me here. So I'm following a dream. So, but yeah. Dreams have always been the foundation and the bedrock of everything that I do. I love it. And I think people tend to get information in a particular way.
and yours is dreams. Mine is I just get hits on things, and people have gotten sounds, and I mean, it comes to you however it comes to you, but it's just paying attention to it.
Absolutely. Every single one of us, like I said, we all have that intuitive muscle.
Yeah.
And it just works with us in a different way. I think it's a wonderful thing. We're all intuitive, but it just comes to us in a different way.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Absolutely. So, okay, so now it's a business. So what's different about LifePlan coaching now? What's different? I
had to make the switch in my mind from it being a hobby that I did on the side to actually this being a viable business. So it was just really just training my mind to see it differently.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing, and so with that, I said, okay, what do I need to know about operating a business? So, I looked at things like, what kind of business model, what do I want to have? What kind of structure do I want to have? Who are the clients that I serve? How is it that I'm going to best serve them? What kind of structure did I want in terms of, do I want to do individual sessions? Do I want to do package sessions? Do I want to do programs? Things like that.
Right.
So I really, really started having to think in that way. And here's the thing, once I started making that switch, all sorts of business information started coming to me. Because I made but it starts here, you have to make the switch in your mind first, and you have to really start thinking about it in terms of a business. It's no longer a hobby.
Right.
It could be a hobby, or it could turn out to be an expensive hobby and not be a business. And so there are people who have businesses that are really not businesses, they're expensive hobbies.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what were the answers to those questions that you asked yourself?
Well, the first thing was, in terms of it being a business, I had to make the switch. It started with me languaging it as, when people asked me what I did, I was no longer a person who worked in the retail industry and just happened to do this on the side. I said, I'm an intuitive life coach. And, as I was making my transition out, and I said, and this is what I do on the side. And so there are times where people, just the other day, someone said to me, well, how's your side business going? And I was like, no, that's my main business.
Yeah.
And so, even when I have to catch people and correct people, because people still have their mindset that when you're working for someone else, that's your work. And then when you're doing something on the side, that's just something on the side. Yeah. So it started with making the switch that way.
But I think you're right that every change we make comes from an internal shift and a different perception. Mm-hmm. And we can be doing exactly the same kinds of things. And once the perception shifts, everything shifts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing, just because you work for one, not you, I'm not talking about you right now, one works for a corporation or a business, does not mean that's the only way to have business, because this show is all about entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs have serious businesses. Some of them grow to be huge. Some stay small because that's what they want.
Right.
But that's being in the business world. And we kind of talked about this before. I think that's the business model that is evolving, that people are beginning to be more innovative and create businesses that have never been created before, or do them in different ways. And they're small businesses. Sometimes it's just one person doing it. Sometimes they bring on other people on board. But that's the new model of business, I think.
Yes, and it's exciting to see, because now that I have become an entrepreneur, I'm finding myself in spaces where I am in contact with a lot more business people, and I get excited by that. It seems like more people are venturing out and starting their own businesses and wanting to do their own thing, and I think it's a wonderful thing.
It is. And I think, for me, business is the best game in town. It's exciting. It gives you a chance to do something innovative. You're doing something that comes from your heart, and you're earning money by doing something that you love, as opposed to earning money and then coming home and do something that you love.
Absolutely. I am so thankful now that I am now one of the people who gets to do what he loves in life and gets paid for it. The first time I got paid to do intuitive work of any kind, I'm like, wow, what a feeling it was to get paid to do something that I loved, because I didn't always love what I was doing prior to that.
Yeah.
And, and so I had to work through that. I had to work through my belief, because, as a coach, we work with people and their belief systems and their stories, because we create stories. And so one of the stories I had was that you have to work hard. Work has to be hard. Work has to be struggle. And that's the only way you get to make money. You don't get to make money doing what it is that you love.
Yeah.
So that was the story I had to change for myself.
And that was a big one to change.
That was a huge one.
Do you find a lot of people coming to you to make that change in their story?
Absolutely. That's a common one, because I work with people who are skilled at what they do, in terms of either a metaphysical metaphysical practice
right.
or holistic practice, and they're in a point where they're doing it, but they're not being paid to do it, or, you know, and they have the story that they can't get paid to do that because they love to do that.
But that was an old story for all of us who were healers, and that's what I used to be early on, that we shouldn't get paid. And I remember once a client called a friend of mine who was also a healer and said, well, why do you charge for that? It's like, so I think that consciousness is shifting.
Yeah. And so I work with a lot of people, and that's part of it is about working on the financial part of that story that they're holding on to, and help them make the transition so they can do the work that they love, and be paid well for it.
So what is it that you say to them in order to make that shift? Because I think that's very important for people to hear.
Well, you know, it's an individual case-by-case basis. But what I do is I ask them to look at what I call their money story. Because we all have a money blueprint. So, I ask them to say, well, tell me what it was like growing up in your house, or, when you were a child, and money. Tell me, like, your first experience with money. And sometimes they explain to me something that happened with one of their parents, and how their parents were influenced by money. And sometimes I ask them to tell me about their first experience when they earned money for themselves, what was that like? Yeah. Things of that nature. How do they view money now? What's their story about money now? We'll look at, are they in debt? How do they manage their money now? Because how they manage money now is how they're going to manage their business. And sometimes we have to be clear on how we manage money in order to successfully finance and manage our businesses. But it's just basically, I ask them the question is like, tell me about your money story. And it's about going into their past and looking at what beliefs have been formed about money from that.
Are they able to change their belief system about money?
Some people immediately can go in and understand what the story's about. Right. And then we work on, like, changing the mindset around that. We kind of help them create a new story and tell it a different way. Because that story happened for a reason. And so my work in that is, how did that serve you? How did that support you? Because on some level you're holding on to the story, so you get something out of holding on to that story. Yep. So we talk about how does that serving them, and because underneath that there's an unmet need there. Sure. And so the need is being met through the story. Sure. So then once we get to what the need is, then we say, okay, how can we proactively have this need met in a more positive way? And so we get, that's part of the process of getting to have that need met. Yep. In a different, better,
and more conscious way, probably. Right. So we're going to talk more with James Himm Mitchell, our LifePlan coach here, and get some more tips on how to change things and how to make it a business that's viable. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a minute.